Private members' business consideration at second reading of Bill C-248, an act to amend the Canada National Parks Act, Ojibway National Urban Park of Canada, standing in the name of Mr. Masse.
Mr. Masse, seconded by Ms. Matheson, moves that Bill C-248, an act to amend the Canada National Parks Act, Ojibway National Urban Park of Canada, be now read a second time and referred to the Standing Committee on Environment and Sustainable Development. The Honourable Member for Windsor West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's an honour to rise here on Bill C-248, an act to create a national urban park, Ojibway National Urban Park in particular. As private members' business, this is an exciting opportunity. We all get drawn in a lottery system that will determine where you actually get in the standing order, and often with parliaments changing, this being my 8th one, I was lucky to get selected in a favourable position, number 7. And Mr. Speaker, it's an honour because some of the things that we can do for our country, whether they get full legislation completion under private members' business or they get some partial movement on them, are quite significant for this country. In fact, they're part of our democracy that's very intringent to keeping it strong, because if one party or one small cabal has all the answers, then what ends up happening is that we miss out on great opportunities that are very unique. And that's what this is, Mr. Speaker. This is a unique opportunity to create a national urban park in the city of Windsor and for Essex County and for not only just Ontario but for Canada. The property that I'm talking about is very significant. In fact, some of the property has 130 endangered species at risk and is a hotspot and a connection not only just to the United States, which is looking at this legislation in a very favorable context as well too, but also for other parts of Ontario and Canada, because there are migratory patterns, and there are also other environmental connections that are very significant, because we live in a Carolinian forest area that has very much a diversification on the Great Lakes. And for those that are not aware, with regards to national parks across the world, there is a growing sentiment that urban parks and national parks are becoming not only just important for the cultural and wellness and the significance of our economies, but also to ourselves as individuals. And nothing saw that more under COVID-19, when we saw outdoor spaces being necessary for us to keep wellness, mental health, and support and new connections to our community. And that leads me to Michelle Pryor, the President of National Parks Association of Queensland, Australia. We talked about national parks being a cornerstone of a modern, enlightened society. Not only are world-famous parks important to form our identity, they also provide abundance of benefits reclaimed from the past for the future. And that's what we're looking at with regards to this national park along the Detroit River and the Great Lakes system that extends into the city of Windsor. They contribute a gap to traditional peoples, which is very important. And so we actually in this territory come from the Three Fires of Confederates First Nations, which includes the Ojibway, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi. And we respect the long-standing relationship of this First Nations. But what's really unique and exciting about this, Mr. Speaker, is also includes Caldwell First Nations. And I won't get into the full detail of that, but recently they actually have a settlement to re-establish themselves in this area and are supporting this project. And what's important is these are some of the heroes of the War of 1812 that were out land settlement claims that are now being rightly justified. And their support of this project and Chief Mary Duckworth is very much appreciated. And so what this park system does do, Mr. Speaker, is it doesn't involve any private property. What it does is connect several pieces of property I'll briefly describe together to create one larger national urban park. And we do have an example of this being the Rouge in the Toronto area, and that's very unique. And each park, just so members are aware, has its own distinctive legislation. The government did move forward with a proposal of some urban parks before the last election, committed some money towards it, but they're not fully established national urban parks, and they will be deprived of significant resources, deprived of cultural and also economic and environmental connections. And each legislation is important because it makes the uniqueness of each park there. And this one's actually critical, Mr. Speaker, because some of the biggest pieces of land that are there, are most significant pieces, is the Ojibway Shores, which the Port Authority of Windsor owns right now, but expects the City of Windsor taxpayers to foot the bill for multi-millions of dollars for public land that we already own. And that area actually is 130 endangered species. In fact, the public had to have an uprising several years ago In fact, I talked with the developer that was working in conjunction with the Port Authority to actually raise the entire area and smash it down, saying it was scrub brush and it was nothing. The developer in the project they had backed down after I talked with them, and then the Port Authority has subsequently put this on to actually being purchased, but the public has pushed back so hard that we finally got an inventory of the site, and it actually has over 130 endangered species that are quite significant. And this 33-acre part of the park system is important because it brings it into the fold with other parts. The Ojibway Prairie Complex, for example, Mr. Speaker, which is actually a collection of 5 closely situated park systems from the City of Windsor, the Province of Ontario. They include the Ojibway Park, the Tallgrass Prairie Heritage Park, Black Oak Heritage Park, and the Spring Garden Natural Area for a total of 604 acres. And this is along, again, the last undeveloped area of the Detroit River in the City of Windsor, one of the last places in the Great Lakes as well, too, that is close to an urban setting for that. And it's an area of actually scientific interest, and on top of that, it's also across and adjacent from American Heritage Registration and environmental improvements, which are significant. One of the things that's next to connected to this is the Spring Garden nature area. And that's an area of significance has been worked for the Excess Region Conservation Authority, which has been very helpful in this process. And also there've been a number of different species that have been identified. They include butterflies, they include birds, they include the fauna, they include all kinds of trees, and a whole series of different elements that are very important that are eventually endangered. Black Oak Heritage Park is also part of this. This is the City of Windsor, and as a city councillor, I was part of that one as well too. And that connects right to the Spring Garden area through a series of other parks, and again to the waterfront. Right next to it is the actual waterfront property being Ojibway Shores. We also have the Tallgrass Prairie Park, and we also have the Ojibway Park. And so you have a number of different things that are in this area. You have the red-bellied snake, Butler's garter snake, and eastern fox snake, the Massasauga rattler, the slender bush clover there was found in 1977, and other types of inventory that is not available in other parts. And as I mentioned, Mr. Speaker, each national park has its own legislation. So Point Pelee National Park, which is very close to this, would be an area where we would actually see some benefits from this, as well as Rondo Park, and that's why it's important, and I'm really pleased that the member from Lunda Fanshawe is seconding this bill for me, because this connects us into southern Ontario very well. We also have Ojibway Park, and that's a really kind of an interesting one because that's by the town of LaSalle on the edge there, and it actually has a new wildlife center and ecosystem there, and the province of Ontario has looked favorably at this. So the landowners that we have involved in this entire complex is quite significant. We have the Port Authority with a key piece of property that the public owns. The Port Authority is an extension of the federal government. It's public lands. We have the province of Ontario that has a piece of property as part of this, and they have the City of Windsor, which is endorsing the project as well as other municipalities to actually make this come to fruition. And the significance that we have for this opportunity is very economically important, because next to this is the building of the Gordie Howe Bridge, this international crossing, which has taken, I think I had my first public meeting at Marlborough Public School at 1998 as a city councillor, when it was the first fight to get a new border crossing in this area. And so we have the Gordie Howe National Bridge being developed, and at the same time, just adjacent to this, is all of this property in a green space. And ironically, on the U.S. side that goes over there is Zug Island, and it's notorious for its environmental hazards, its degradation on the Detroit side. But what's interesting, Madam Speaker, is that you actually now have the wildlife refuge that's being created in Detroit in 2001. It was established, and there's been more money poured into it. And I want to thank a number of different people that came over when I had my town hall on this about 2.5 years ago at Southwood Public School, Southwood Arena, sorry. We actually had the departments from Michigan and their federal government and other people come over from the United States, even the Audubon Society, which are related to birds and so forth, because the connections are so strong. So anyone interested in the Great Lakes and the value of the water, the value of the ecosystem there, is going to have a high degree interest in this, as it's one of our last refuges. In 2004, even the U.S. then created the refuge of the Humberg Marsh, which is adjacent to this across the Detroit River. So this is really historic. And, you know, this property that we're talking about is giving a rise to a whole series of different interesting developments. I know that even as I did in some of my constituency work, I have a book here from Marty Gervais, Walk in the Woods, a portrait of the Ojibway shores, and it goes through a series of different things that go back from the 1960s. And Marty Gervais, if you're not know, is very much a local historian and very much a celebrated author. And he has done a number of different works on that. And even as I've done my constituency workout with a calendar, there's a coloring book for Ojibway shores. You find that what's happening with climate change and the opportunity for people to be engaged has been muted in some ways because people feel it's out of their control. They feel that there is no way that they can actually have a correlation with it. And that's when I'm finding a difference with regards to this. When with the Unifor, who's been supportive of this, with the Friends of Ojibway, who've been supportive of this, a whole series of other environmental individuals that have been involved in this, and also the tourism and also the businesses that are next to this because of the flood mitigation. They find that this project is giving hope and opportunity to have a real result. And with COVID-19, again, I mentioned earlier that outdoor public spaces are important, and there is some use in these properties, outdoor spaces, but they're not coordinated. They're not coordinated, they're not connected in the way that we need to do so under this bill. And that's what's exciting. Even Parks Canada funded recently $600,000 to inventory this region and also the subsequent affiliated regions on how actually to build the environment better there. But still, without having this legislation, we don't have an official roadmap. We miss out on opportunities to get funding. We miss out on the private sector that wants to invest heavily into this project to make sure it's going to be beautiful, beneficial, and environmentally protected, and also help them for their adjacent properties, and also some other ones from outside the region that are supportive of the diversification that we have down there. We've seen bald eagles down there, kingfishers, all kinds of different types of elements that are really important to actually reclaiming our environment in urban settings. And that's one of the most important things about this is so when I talk to schools, I talk to students, I talk to different people, it's incredible the response I get because back in 2017, the Essex County Field Naturalists went and inventoried and found that this wasn't what the port said, being scrub brush. That's what they told me for years, and it was not worthy of actually saving. But what they found, the naturalists found, was they found over 130 endangered species, but we still don't have a plan for it. And so what we have is an area where the shores meets 9 out of 10 criteria for saving the actual environment. It's one of the reasons the province of Ontario is interested in this. And again, it's why it's building a coalition of those that are there to support it. There's many different groups and organizations that have been part of this. I've had Dr. David Suzuki down at the property, and I've also even had different types of students and organizations. And Madam Speaker, when we're looking at the bill itself and entirely, we have the opportunity to act. If we sit on our hands and feel sorry for ourselves because we can't get it done, then we miss out on unique opportunities. This one's simple. It's all public land. It's all put together. It's almost ready-made. We need to do that, Madam Speaker, for our future because it's all in our benefit.